Okay, everyone. Welcome to your 2:45 session. You are in the session How to Farm Forever. Woo! Yeah, just letting y'all get seated. All right. One second to last reminder that if you are an extension agent or getting your pesticide applicator's license, there are clipboards on the right corner of the registration table to sign in and get your continuing education units. Also, exits are in the back, as you've seen. We will have session survey cards, so I'll be passing those out probably midway through to give you a chance to do those. We like to take your feedback on this presentation and also future ones you want to see. I am Natalie Ryder. I'm the Associate Director of the Organic Association of Kentucky. So glad to have you here today. I wanted to say one quick announcement that I don't want to forget to say at the end, just that the final session today in the program says 4:15 to 5:15. It's actually 4 to 5. So you can get your weekend started a slight bit earlier, okay? All right. How to Farm Forever. With us today, we have Joseph Monroe. Joseph lives and farms diversified vegetables and grass-fed cattle on 118 acres in Henry County, where he and his wife, Abby Scott Monroe, steward the land with respect and integrate community throughout their work. Valley Spirit Farm incorporates organic and conservation practices and adaptive grazing techniques into their production. They were among the first farms in the Berry Center's Our Home Place Meat initiative. They also sell at the Douglas Loop Farmers Market in Louisville and contribute to the local food purchase assistance program. We also have with us David Robb. David Robb has been involved in organic agriculture for 25 years. He has worked in and managed an organic dairy and large East Coast organic growers cooperative and a vegetable farm employing individuals with disabilities. He served on North Central Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education's grant review committees. His home farm, Eden Prairie, sells vegetables and meats to restaurants and through farmers markets in the Indianapolis area. So with that, I'll let y'all take it away.
Well, first of all, you might be wondering how we know each other. David was for a long time my boss and my mentor and my friend, and I'm very happy that he joined to do this presentation with me. Basically, working under David for 4 years, I not only learned how to farm, but how to work, and there was a lot of things about his lifestyle that I also wanted. So I'm very grateful to reconnect with him and do this together. I wanted to give just a quick, I'm not an expert in this. I don't know how to farm forever. So if you're wondering, but I wanted to, when I was 27, I wrote a business plan. And much like High Five Farm mentioned, I ran out this year, my business plan. I think you ran out at year 5, right? So I wrote to year 10. And year 10, just have no idea. Maybe if I'm still going, learn how to farm forever from that point. So last year was my 10th year, and I spent all year kind of grappling with that question, was I serious when I was 27? Or is that even possible? But I do know that I love farming as much now as I did then. And I just wanted to figure out a way to keep it going. So I did a lot of researching, and I reached out to David, who is my foundation, and I wanted to see what the future holds when the business plan is over. So, David?
I had no idea that I was going to be up here with a semi-famous individual, but apparently he's well known. I'm a little out of my geographic area here. I'm central Indiana. That's someplace that I've lived. Um, this How to Farm Forever, apparently he called me when he was harvesting garlic and said, here's the subject. I want to do it with you. Go for it. So anyway, what I had for me, first off, we're really talking about local food production here, and providing to individuals or restaurants and maybe some wholesale, but we're not talking huge wholesaling, sending it far away, all right? And how I'm approaching this is something that I've been involved in this for a long time, was always a gardener growing up, came from a family who gardened, all that, and had some farm background. And so for me, looking over a span, what became important about farming forever is what are some of the things that we're going to get thrown at us that are going to change our ability to be local farmers. And I'll talk about these as we go along, certainly. But a lot of them are the changes in a broader society. And those, I'm just going to list them real quick: transportation, immigration, interstates, the back to the land and environmental movement, food norms, a change of food norms, the internet, and then finally I'm going to talk about shocks. What kind of shocks occurred over time and currently that suddenly change our whole landscape in terms of local food? So that's sort of me.
So I wanted to do a presentation about longevity. And David kind of mentioned some of the things that our society has gone through and how that affected food production over the last, since about 1850. First of all, I just wanted to say I had to look to the past to understand the future. Things that happened are more likely, that have actually happened, have a higher probability of happening again rather than something new, potentially. So, and what were those conditions that caused a good condition for market gardening? So yes, we're talking about market gardening, which is like a niche form, really, we have to be honest, a niche part of agriculture. And in this sloppy map that I thought would be awesome, but I hand drew, if I had a red pointer, I would point to 3 periods on there I tried to box from, basically we're going to do history here for a minute. So, this is, So, the post-Civil War till basically mirroring the Gilded Age, which I haven't read too much on, but that was a great time to be a market gardener, especially in the Northeast and the South, after they got rail cars and were shipping vegetables to the northern cities. So I'm going to focus a lot on that time period, and it's remarkable, the parallels, to me, I found very interesting. And then the second time period we are going to talk about, I termed as the truck farm heyday, post-World War II until Earl Butz started talking. And then the last period we might still be living in, I think we are, sometime in the late 80s until now-ish. I'm calling entrepreneurial farmers find a way to survive, basically. Coming out of just really high mortgage rates of the 80s and a lot of things not going in their favor. It seems like we live in a time now that it's more important to be a good business person than a good farmer. And the ones that are still here are here because you did enough good business, or you know enough about business to survive, unfortunately. So we've lost a lot of really good farmers who just didn't know, so we're living in that, I'm calling it this time, that's our time period. Really great overview of American market gardening history is this Becker guy. So if you ever want just a really nice, sweet 6-page paper of just history of market gardening, this is a great place to start. It's free. Basically every book I'm going to reference is free, online. But in this picture, it's kind of blurry. I can see it better at a smaller scale, but there wasn't much vegetable production or interest until the 1850s or so. There was a little bit, such as people were cultivating melons and giving them names, working on cultivars, but really they didn't even have tomatoes yet, really, in much popular consumption, and sweet corn was just field corn harvested early, and they called it sugar corn. So we're picking up after Civil War, put a damper on that. But in this picture, just a lot of interesting things are going on that could very well be happening today. A guy is marking rows with a rake that I'm pretty sure Johnny sells something like that. And then another guy, he's with a watering can watering the furrows before planting as they're taking out the crop, which we're always talking about flipping beds real fast and all that. They're flipping beds real fast. They're harvesting cabbage straight into barrels because they're going to be shipped. These are like 50-gallon drum barrels. And that's how they shipped them. So just a lot of interesting, and this is called like a planting picture, but they're harvesting too. This is just some Gilded Age issues. There was a lot of economic disparity and rapid industrialization. Those issues seem similar today. I thought this picture was kind of cool, like this farmer said, "I feed you all." Like he's just like leaning on his plow. Yeah, so easy. I want to spotlight this guy. Jeff Poppin knows about him, is in his book, but I don't think enough people know who this person was. He was like a Elliot Coleman of his time. Not saying he just kind of wrote kind of like the first book that got like a whole market garden stir-up happening. So many books were written after his that he wrote was one of the most popular books in his time, and reading through it just so chock full of just so many interesting stuff. If you really are a market gardener, you'll just be like, that was a great idea. So I'm going to go through a few things I learned from his book because I think he's real important. I think we should know his name. Liberty High Bailey said of him, Liberty High Bailey is like horticulture giant, right? Like he's probably more well known than Peter Henderson, but a peer. Few men have done so much to simplify and improve the methods of handling plants for commercial purposes. His greenhouses are an object lesson to many visitors. His methods were widely copied, and his business successes were the goal and ambition of market gardeners, florists, among whom he was for many years the most commanding figure. And like the Henderson lima bean is named after him. There's also like a Henderson cauliflower. Just some work he did is still lasting today. He wrote these like principles for success that us living in a time where it's important to be good at business. They make a lot of sense. I'm not going to read them all. But I just love reading someone who's like common sense and like imaginative. He talks a lot about the crops that he grows, and he mentions widely what the most popular crops are in a greenhouse for him and for all of the growers he knows. What do you think his top 4 crops would be? Tomatoes, number 4. Nope. Cucumber, number 3. Nope. Number 1, lettuce. Number 2, radishes. Just the exact same crops we're growing in winter high tunnels and summer high tunnels today, And that was, the late 1800s. He did a lot of work on celery and cauliflower. You can see him and basically our nation trying to understand how to grow those crops in that time. They hadn't really figured it out, and he was kind of grappling with it. He also said that the wheel hoe had more to do with taking the mule and the horse out of the market garden than a tractor did, which I thought was very interesting. You wouldn't think it, but I think that these wheel hoes are much better made than the ones today. I use a TerraTech double wheel hoe a lot, but think about how smart, and I do have one of these from like the late 1800s, and you can order from Haas like new sticks to put on it. It's awesome because I don't have all these attachments, but one really cool thing I think someone should do, those are leaf lifters. And when you're like cultivating late stage beets or bunch greens, it'll lift the leaves up as the wheels pass instead of crushing them. I don't know if you've had that problem. I have that problem sometimes. The leaf lifters have been sheared off of mine. So they, you can tell they're a little fragile. Oh, shoot. Well, there it is. That's supposed to be a video of me using it, but the videos didn't work on this. Sorry, I didn't mention the videos didn't work. Jeff Poppin talked about this. Cold frames were super important. They grew all their plants in them, and they actually called them sashes, which every time I read it, I just thought sachets. And so I was always going like, that was reading. But yeah, cold frames were a definer of scale. Market gardeners didn't talk like, how many acres do you have under production? They would talk, how many sashes do you have? And they would grow in these boxes, not just their transplants, but then they would use them to get a jump on their tomato or a cucumber, and then just let them grow out of the cold frame. And they called this forwarding, which I kind of like that term, forwarding a crop. He talked a lot about horseradish, and I was really surprised. People were eating horseradish in the 1800s. They were flavoring their food, and I grew some horseradish this year, and it is spicy. So spicy. People like spicy stuff, and I think if we're talking about ginger and turmeric a lot, I think horseradish in the mix, it's a lot different cultural concerns, but I think it's really got a place at the market garden. I was pushing it on people, and I didn't know this, but we harvested it right in time for Passover, and that was great because they use it in Seder meals a lot, and I didn't know, it was like I didn't know how many of my customers were, doing Seder, but it's a very good tonic for everything, and they use it a lot for flavoring beef, especially, and just a real interesting thing. I was grateful to find an old book. And then real quick, this I thought was so interesting, but I'm just going to rush through it because I'm talking a lot. Cabbage was sold for 5 times the amount of lettuce. And today I think like sometimes, especially now that we got lettuce mix, and I'm thinking about fertility, like lettuce doesn't take as much from the soil as cabbage, and it seems like we're almost selling lettuce for more than cabbage these days, especially because we're focusing on smaller cabbages. But it's just interesting to see someone's accounting that maybe we should be charging more for the crops that take more fertility out of the soil. Speaking of fertility, the one thing that he does talk a lot about is, so that would be a lot of money right there, you know? And he was a big proponent of manure, but we don't have livery stables everywhere, but he was really slinging manure, like 75 tons an acre. He also brought about a definition that I didn't have in my head that really helped me understand what kind of farmer I was. He really had a division between a market gardener and a truck farmer. And it's just a matter of scale. A truck farmer might use a bigger tractor. A market gardener might use a BCS. But I thought truck farming, they live further away from the city. They grew less perishable crops, and growing vegetables were kind of part of a mix of a bigger system of their farm. But he was a market gardener, and he believed in being really super close to your markets, and even paying like pay the rent for it. He was a big proponent of just paying up for the land that was close. Let's see. So I also just wanted to mention, like, along with the manuring and just finding other crops, like, well, I'm going to say it again, but cover cropping is a huge key to finding a way to farm forever. Not just that it improves the soil, but you can develop systems that can keep your mind entertained about successions. Like, I don't know where my tomatoes are going to be planted in 2 years, but I know where I'm going to have clover. And just having something to follow, and that has a lot of room for play, and a lot of other species you could be adding into your cover crop mix, I think has really helped me mentally stay engaged with farming. Just that that you can improve the soil and have fun with it, with different species of cover crops. So, David, I'm going to let you pick up here. We're going to head into truck farm heyday, and maybe you can talk about some of the conditions around that time.
What year are we in now?
Well,
I think we're about heading into the 1950s somewhere.
Yep.
Okay. Well, now that we're all been humbled by Joseph's presentation, that they were doing this way before us. We don't got anything new, hardly, but a few things. So I just want to talk a little bit about, so just reminisce on some of my own experiences. I was born in 1950, and thinking back then and watching what's happened over time, it's very interesting. One is that my dad grew up on a farm out in eastern Nebraska, just a dirt farm, some livestock. They grew everything. My mom grew up in a nearby town that was on a rail line, But they would always go to their auntie's farm to get produce. There certainly was a local grocer that they would buy the staples from and this and that. But it was very local farm made. When as I was growing up, my mom, who was the main cook in the house, where did she get her food? Well, we had a very vibrant city market in downtown Indianapolis. And you go there and suddenly everybody's talking in languages you don't understand. And the food and the smells and the loudness and all this, because there was a tremendous number of ethnic farmers and producers who were coming to this central location. And we used to go there. We used to stop at farm stands outside the city, which were being run. We got food there. There certainly were local grocers, but you're talking canned goods and staples and those kind of things. So mostly the fresh food was coming from these direct kind of places, all right? In the late 50s, there was a major change that happened. It was the interstate highways. Suddenly, everything was coming in from California, okay? Not everything, but in Arizona. And these local producers slowly started to fade. There was actually a local truck farm place where the farmers would bring their trucks back up, and they would have a whole truckload of onions or a whole truckload of potatoes. And my mom would take us there, and she would buy stocks like that. Or we still would go out to farmers markets and buy things, but slowly those people got older and older, and they closed, and they no longer were growing. And then the real killer was when the supermarket came in. Everything coming in from out of town, way far away. Oh, it's so convenient. It's convenient now. You go to the supermarket, and there it is. So local food essentially just disappeared completely. Until about the 1960s, which was a very changing time, as we all know, some of us know very well. Suddenly, back to the land, the environmental movement took off. People had more of an interest in growing local food. But another thing that started happening in this period of time was immigration started increasing. There was one, I wanted to show the slides of, in the early 1800s, there was a whole German population that migrated into the Midwest. And they brought a lot of European growing methods. And on the south side of Indianapolis, there were... Oh, I'm sorry. She said I can't walk. There were acres and acres of glass-covered greenhouses. And I can remember going there with my parents and buying fresh, in the winter, lettuces and produce. At one point, these greenhouses, which covered miles in the south side of Indianapolis, was the largest area under greenhouse in the United States. They were growing lettuces in the winter, tomatoes in the summer. And the story that we always heard was that for John F. Kennedy's inauguration dinner, they served bibbed lettuce from the south side greenhouses. Well, the 60s came, interstates came in, and it all fizzled out. Even today, there are still from frames of these left. No glasses, no glass greenhouses, no nothing. Well, then we jump forward a little bit, looking, and we're going to enter into some of the period of time of some of the things that you all know. So we got the back of the land, all that kind of stuff. So there became a real change in the culture of food. If you're my age, you were suddenly amazed when on the table at dinner time would appear curry. Or, my God, Mexican food. My dad hated Mexican food. It gave him really bad gas. But this is a sign that the norms around what food people ate. It's not beans and potatoes and meat. Suddenly there was more things coming in, which started also changing people's consciousness. So these cultural norms were starting to ferment and change. And then, of course, you got the coasts. And on the coasts, this was what we, 5, 10 years ahead of the Midwest. And then, just skipping forward really quickly, certainly, the internet comes in. You're all aware of that. But now there's something else. There's something else that happens when you're looking back through time. And one of those is what I call shocks. When the interstate came in, that was a shock to the local food system. It totally almost destroyed the local food system. Okay, that was one thing that happened. We had a shock in 2020, COVID. I don't know if a lot of you were farming then, but I did great that year until I sold out, because suddenly people would no longer, they didn't trust the supermarkets. So it gave the local food system a lot of impetus. The next thing that really, as a shock to me, and Joseph actually pointed this out, is aging. You all are going to age someday, okay? I was gung-ho. I was Mr. Man, I'm going to put more land under acreage. I'm going to be fine. This is going to go on forever. I eat good. I'm healthy. And then suddenly I end up in the hospital. And I ended up in the hospital again and again. And I couldn't do it anymore. I'm calling up my son. I'm putting the kids to work. And so it was a great realization, as a shock, to realize that this is going to happen someday. Not only aging, but there are going to be other things. There's going to be more COVA. There's going to be, are these inspectors going to come on your farm and look at everything? What are the shocks out there? So to farm forever merely means to pay attention to other things that are changing around you. We're all risk takers. Farming is a risk-taking operation, and I love it. But you understand, if you start thinking about changes in transportation, technology, your customer base, the norms that are out there, that's where changes are going to happen, and you need to keep your eye on them in order to farm forever.
Yeah, that was really good. I think, you told me the story of like when you were having trouble with your heart, and you were like, doctor, why is this happening to me? I'm eating well, I'm exercising, and your doctor was like, well, think what would happen if you hadn't been doing those things already. I remember you telling me that. Yeah, it's, to think about farming forever, you have to recognize that first it's an emotional topic, which is what you talked about, David. Is a tender subject, and I know that there are farmers out there thinking about succession plans and not really sure what to do, and or don't know what their options are. So towards the end, we'll go back to that. I wanted to kind of go back real quick, I think, just to the history before we keep going. I just want to point out in the nope, wrong. I pressed the wrong button. But, shoot. Well, anyways, I think we're froze. But in the 50s, what you were talking about, roadside stands were big. Like now we have like farmers markets and CSAs, and back then in the first period I was talking about in the late 1800s, they were, mostly wholesaling they were selling to hotels and, certainly grocers, but they weren't like a lot standing. They were selling to someone to resell it somewhere else. The 50s, 60s, we saw the roadside stand be really important, and the interstate really cramped its style. Yeah, I don't know. I pressed the top button and now it doesn't scroll.
The top button is for spotlight, the big button.
Oh, okay.
But it doesn't look like it's working either.
Yeah. And we still see some roadside stands. I think about there's one off of 421. It's called Bray's. Does anyone know Bray's Peaches? Well, they're big time back in the day. And when they put in I-71, it really killed their business. Think about how many people were driving by them on the highway system that weren't now, that are just going on the interstate. So that really hurt a lot of rural producers who were close enough to a highway. Now they're getting so much less traffic just whizzing by on the interstate, not seeing them at all. I would think about when you make that decision, am I going to go the interstate way or am I going to go the highway way? Am I going to have fun seeing what I want to see, or am I just going to get there? You know, like that what happened then really, it really hurt local production being able to be sold right there off the farm. And we're talking a lot about how to make more. I mean, if you're going to farm forever, you've got to make a lot of money, like more than you think, because it's tight. And we're thinking about how do we increase margins, or how do we grow more? Which one do I do? If you could sell right off your farm or really close, you know, that would, and we saw that during COVID. A lot of farm stores went up. That was a lot like the 50s. And it was mostly for fruit. It's hard to get someone to come to, I think it's harder to get someone to come to your farm for vegetables, but if you got melons, you know, and strawberries, people follow sugar, you know? And those were the first two crops to gain popularity in America, like something that people would go from their house somewhere else to go get. And I think we still would. I would. So I wanted to quick highlight this entrepreneurial age. That's not really my title. I want to give some credit here. That's what Mary Berry would call it, entrepreneurial farmers. And someone in this room might recognize this guy. I wanted to highlight him. I think he deserves a lot of credit in our state. Like if we were to get like if Oak were to start like an organic farmer hall of fame, I think like Steve Smith would be ballot A inductee, because he read, I'm saying this whole movement kind of started with Elliot Coleman's book. It really did, The New Organic Grower really did kind of pierce the public, but also Booker T. Watley's book was out then, and I really want to highlight that. That was a real important book for me, learning to farm. And he was really into U-Picks, but he had a lot of other good ideas. But Steve Smith, he read Elliot Coleman's book and then started what he called a food guild, but basically a CSA, right the next year, you know? And so here we have like the information age kind of like paying off. Someone from Maine said something, and someone from Kentucky immediately applied it and had a whole new way of selling things from his farm. But we're still primarily serving customers with disposable income for this. And I really think, here's the challenge, we've really, as market gardeners, got to pierce into the mainstream food system. And I think there's programs out there that, you know, I think the LFPA can kind of help me see what that was like a little bit. But I'm talking like schools and hospitals. If we really want to be here for a long time, they're eating meals every day at school and at hospitals. So That's never going to go away. CSAs, I don't know. I'm sorry to say it, but I couldn't keep a CSA going. I wouldn't advise someone to start a CSA from scratch today. It's just kind of, that's just kind of filled up. It's a crowded space to be in. This is us like 12 years ago. I wanted to say this. We're kind of heading towards the end. So David, if you've thought of more things to say, that would be nice, because I'm about out. 5 minutes. But a couple points I want to drive home. And I hope you've got this from so far. Thinking about farming forever is not just thinking about the future. Forever is kind of like an infinity symbol. You have to incorporate the past and the present when you think about forever. And that's something that helped me, thinking about it that way. Because I got a lot of anxiety, because like every year, like, you know, you lose some customers, you hope to gain some others, you don't know who's gonna help you on the farm, if you're gonna have enough help. It's just like, or if you're gonna have enough money to even start it again, or remember what the heck you're doing, you know, or if, you know, equipment's gonna break. But when I thought about, I wanted to feel personally like I was part of a longer continuum of people who grew things because they loved it, to sell to other people. And through this process of going through the history, I kind of felt more connected to people a long time ago who had a good time growing some vegetables and selling to people who liked it. And they had, and that ended sort of by things that happened in our society that were out of their control and aging. So forever, how to farm forever also involves like connect to your roots, you know, hold on to them tight, you know, that's, you will need to go back to them. You know, you might be, I don't know if you've experienced this, but like the passion runs out, you know, you got into farming for passion and then you're like fracking YouTube for passion, you know, and it's not there anymore. You need something more. I did. So I just wanted to say these two images totally are, they're kind of opposing forces, but they both symbolize forever. Though the one on your left is a chain that my uncle gave me, and it was my great-grandfather's. And he gave every one of his nieces and nephews one thing from their great-grandparents, and he gave me the chain. And I don't know if it meant anything to him, but to me, it's a logging chain. It's very useful. I pull stuff around with it all the time, and I think about the links in it, and I think that's important. If you want to increase your longevity in market gardening, you have to hold on to your mentors, the link before you, and you got to find someone to teach what they taught you, and you have to be a link in the chain, okay? You don't know what's gonna happen to the people that you're teaching that taught, you know, that taught you. So you don't know what they're gonna do, what they're gonna learn, what they're gonna do for, you know, in the world, and it's important. So get yourself in the middle of a chain, okay? Tragically, like my uncle, he experienced tragedy. He won't be able to farm forever, you know, but he would smoke anyone in a farming contest. He's the best farmer I've ever seen. Like, what, you know those combines they're like a combine, but they're on a tractor. It's like a corn picker, but you're on a tractor and you're shooting the corn out the back into a wagon. He does that. And it just seems like the most technical, hardest, but also the coolest thing that you could do with farming is to pick corn on a tractor flying behind you. That just seems like the best day. But to keep that thing running, I know he works all the time on it, and he's restored so many antique tractors, just like all that kind of knowledge. The other thing is an arrowhead. If you know Boxcar Acres, they farmed on our farm for a year while they were in transition in between land, and Mikey found this arrowhead on our farm. I didn't find it. If you need someone to help you find arrowheads, like he's the guy. So that's in a 2-acre field that we have. That was laying in a 2-acre field that we have. And some human being, however many hundreds of years ago, shot this arrowhead for food, and they don't exist anymore, and their whole culture is gone. And I just try to keep these two images in my head when I think about what's possible. And I'm someone who wants to know what's possible, because I think we actually still have a long way to go as far as what we can do, as far as producing good food for people. And I do think oak has got a really good handle on how to help you do it. So I wouldn't be saying this here if I didn't believe that that was true, and that we shouldn't be satisfied with where we're at now. Use your imagination and look to the past at what worked. Let's see what we can do.
Well, that's stunning. Just a couple, I'm going to go practical here. When I got older and with health problems, what the hell did I do? I wanted to continue to farm. I wanted to. Shrunk the acreage down, concentrate on my hoop houses and season extension, only grow a few crops with high value that don't take a lot of weeding or that multiple harvests. And I stopped doing farmers markets, and instead I had developed a very robust set of chefs, local chefs, who would buy really odd things because they were fun, high value, and I could sell them at a good price. So that's what I do. I don't use my big tiller anymore because it ruins me, okay? And that's really hard to accept that's going to happen. It might even happen as you're young. You're going to recover quicker, believe me. But anyway, so shrinking down, concentrating on high value crops, pacing yourself, definitely, that kind of thing. Season extension is always great to do that because you're hitting the market off season when everybody else has everything. And yeah, so that's a few practical things about what to do as you have to cut back, whether you're young or old.
We have about a little over 10 minutes left. Do I want to take some questions? Okay, I'll come around with the microphone. So raise your hand if you have a question. Somebody's got a burning question. Oh yeah, Ray, I'm coming.
Do you have any physical practices to take care of your body that you do on a regular basis?
When I met David, you were a regular yoga practitioner back in the day. And so you kind of got me onto that. And I think if I can do one sun salutation a day, at least, that pays off a lot. I really am not the person to ask for this.
Jeez, he's still young.
I don't do self-care. I really do. Maybe, here's one. Well, I'll save this. It's not, someone else would be better. Do you have any?
Joseph, don't you walk? You walk your cattle a lot.
Okay, I was going to talk about cows.
Okay.
That's where I was going to go. Another thing about this doesn't answer your question directly, but like vegetable farming is like down here, just stooping all the time, and working with animals is up here. And so I can move in between. So another like hint on how to farm forever, get animals, not just because of the physical aspect, but because it's something you can work on that you can pass on, you know, like your breeding work, that special thing to you, those special animals are, I'm sorry to say this, animals are more important than plants. You can have a dark day and not get out of bed because of plants, but if you have a dark day, you have to get out of bed because of animals. And sometimes that day will happen. So animals, cover crops. Also, just like one plant that's really special to you, like garlic, like really grow some special garlic and make some seed to I think breeding is really important. It's going to be real important for us. I know that people are talking more about breeding vegetables, but that's something that could tie you into it. You know, improving vegetables, if you're concerned, like, am I going to have enough will to keep doing this? If you're working on like a really special melon or something, you might just keep going for the melon's sake, not your sake. You know, physically, self-care is something I probably need to address. Like there was like it finally hit me, like I lost a step this year, you know, 37. And it was, and I realized it when I was playing basketball, that I had lost a step, you know? And I had something happen to me like sciatica, and I couldn't farm for like a while, and it was scary for me. So I've had to take care of myself, and I had to slow down. And if you have examples for me of things I should be doing so I can keep farming forever, let me know, because physically I need to, you know.
Questions?
Well, in terms of body and taken
please.
care of, well, I would love to do yoga again, but I can't get down off. If I get on the ground, that's a problem. Because my knees, you know, they went bad. I had some replacements, this and that. But, of course, I try to eat well, this and that. I get up really early. Morning is my absolute best time. My favorite schedule of day is to get up early, get started, work till maybe noon or so, quit and have a nice lunch, and then take a long nap. And then, after dinner, once it cools off, go out and do some more work for an hour or two, weeding, this or that. It's cooler, you're refreshed, and then particularly the longer days, that really helps. Let me see, I think that was, yeah. And I agree with the livestock. I still have cows, and I absolutely adore it. I move them every day. I go out, I sit with them, I water them, take a little hay out, this and that. Now, I do get my sons to move the big round bales with the tractor and lift stuff around. But I could do it, and I will. But, yeah, get help if you can. And if you can't get help and you can't do it, do something else. Do something else fun.
So I'm in the beginning of my farming career, like year 3, and I have the tendency to take on too much or take on a lot. I was curious if either you have thoughts on like how to kind of pace yourself or ways you've thought about growing in a sustainable way for your energy level and your sanity.
Don't, yeah. Don't take on too much. Go slow to start. Don't go in debt if you can. Please don't. I've seen this over and over. People who happen to have a bunch of money in their pocket from selling something or whatever. Oh, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to go big, I'm going to make lots of money. Start slow, save, move forward, start slow, save.
Yeah, that was one of Peter Henderson's principles, was to don't be undercapitalized. Like if you're going to do something, know that you can fully do it. And I think one of the keys to that is to have backups, like tools that can do the same thing, maybe at different scales, but like so that when the day comes that you need to get that job done, you have something that can do it. I'm younger, so probably stupider, but than David's advice, but I would say like we got to be pushing ourselves. It's the time in your life when you can.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's working, but it's like at what? Oh, sorry. Yeah, like I'm pushing, and I think a lot of folks in that stage are, but yeah, like how sustainable is that? Or yeah, what does that trajectory look like over the course?
40, 45, 50 definitely.
Yeah.
That's the start.
He's probably right. But I saw David run 2 farms at once, you know. He was going all the time and later in life. I do think, like, yeah, don't get yourself way in debt, but like a little bit, you're going to have to, I mean, if you're going to be serious. Yeah, so just pump out the veg. Just pump it and then pay that off and then you'll be good.
Yeah, my son Eli and his wife Genesis have a farm that a lot of you know, Full Hand Farm. And I talk to Eli all the time, and it's like, oh, I hurt myself up today. You know, I just got to look after the kids all day. You know, so there's a point where you just can't push yourself, and you got to be careful and step back a little. And believe me, it is so hard.
Another thing is, like, if you have, like, so integral to me being here today is, like, my wife, my partner. You know, like, if you have somebody, that's such a huge leap. Someone that can pick you, knows when to humble you and when to pick you up, you know. And, like, it also helps that my wife is much smarter than me. So I'm just kind of like a big dreamer, and she's very grounded, has very good gut decisions. So I usually run my dreams through her gut, and we end up getting something pretty good.
Well, with that, let's give a round of applause. Thank you all. And reminder to complete those session surveys. And if you wouldn't mind leaving them on your table, or if you're in one of the chairs in the back, set them on a round table and we'll pick them up. About 15 minutes. Remember that the last session starts at 4, not 4:15.